Don't chuck that shuck. That's the mantra that brought us together a few years ago. This is Todd Janeski. He developed the Virginia Oyster Shell Recycling Program. It's a project of the VCU Rice Rivers Center. Fast forward today, Todd, we're back. I'm going to get my hands dirty.
Yeah, great.
What do we have going on?
Yes, so today what we're doing is we're planting shell that we have recycled. This shell has been seeded with larval oysters. So for an oyster's first 2-3 weeks of their life, they're a free-swimming animal. And what we do is we introduce them into a large tank that we're emptying right now that's full of these bags of shell. Those larvae oysters are seeking this hard surface to attach to. And as we look on these bags, we can actually see, like here, for example, here's one baby oyster attached to that shell there. We've been counting them.
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing as many as 34 strike, is what it's called, per shell. And so what we're doing is we're taking these bags, we're emptying them into baskets, and we're putting them on a reef in the Pianka tank.
All right, we're going to get hands-on today and make that happen. This is that preferred substrate. That's why he's asking everybody not to get rid of the oyster shell, because this is supreme. This is like gold.
This absolutely is. I mean, you can't, because the industry has said, no, this is way too important, and they're actually stopping that redirection of that this material so that it goes back in the bay as part of natural shell production, just to build a hardened reef. Or like what we're doing, which is to put the baby oysters on there and then put them back out.
So Todd, the spat that were in the tank, how quickly did they end up setting?
So those spat, once we put them in the tank, those larvae, when they go in and they become spat once they strike, that's about 2 to 3 days.
So it's pretty quick.
It is pretty quick. These oysters live on the bottom. They get tumbled around, they get beat up. You know, they're preyed on by crab. There's a home for all sorts of finfish around there, and so they're kind of getting stirred up, and as they're growing, they're knitting together into that oyster reef.
And in doing something like this, they'll be building that oyster reef. We've talked before about what impact does that have?
Oh, it's a huge impact. I mean, oysters have a lot of ecosystem services. They're filterers, and so they're removing material from the water column. But as they grow and they're filtering, they're helping that water quality around there. But they are, as I was mentioning before, they provide this home for crabs, for striped bass, for speckled sea trout. Matter of fact, VCU just finished some research recently and found 31 species of fish that utilize oyster reefs at some life stage.
How big will this particular project be, and how often are you doing these?
Yeah, so this project, we're putting out about 450 bushels this week, and we'll probably do that another 2 times this year. We seeded one of the 2 tanks on site with 8 million oysters. Next time, if we can do it, we'll seed both tanks and we'll put 16 to 20 million oysters on those. You can step up in that little gap right there, it'll be easy. And I'll come over here and just kind of come over and just take it right out. Yep, empty it out.
So 1 bucket at a time of restoration, Todd. Why? This used to be a huge industry for Virginia.
Sure.
What changed?
Well, a lot of things really kind of impacted the oyster industry. Post-World War II, we saw a huge development boom in the Chesapeake Bay. We saw homes, pop up where there were farm fields and forests. That really changed how runoff took place and went from people's yards into the streams and ultimately the rivers and bay. And water quality declined. The same time period around then, we started seeing a new influx of watermen from the Northeast come down and harvest the Chesapeake Bay for oysters. That combined pressure on a stressed population because of water quality issues was made those oysters really susceptible to things like disease. We saw a couple that really affected it not long after in the 50s or the 70s. And so, culmination of poor water quality, over-harvesting, disease, really wiped us out. We hit an all-time low around 2003, where there virtually were no oysters being harvested.
You've got so much coming in here. All of these were done, more to come, but this, how long will it take to set? Kind of do its thing?
Well, pretty much as soon as they're in there, they're already doing their thing. They're growing, they're feeding, by putting that hard substrate down, fish will start to use this habitat. So immediately by just returning the shell alone, but the fact that we're putting spout on shell back as well, we're putting animals back in the system.
Yeah.
So you've got the combination of the hard structure that the fish will use, more oysters can grow on. The water temps are rising right now, so the wild spawn will start taking place. So now we're providing a substrate for them to attach, and these babies that we put out there that are 2-3 weeks old now are already got a head start on the ones that are going to be growing behind them. So yeah, it's immediate. It really is.
Great work from the Virginia Oyster Shell Recycling Program here on the Pianka Tank. Thanks, Todd.
Oh, thanks for coming out. Really appreciate you guys coming to join us today.
For more about this program, visit WTVR.com/poweringvirginia for a direct link.